asked me to be part of this conversation on your new book, which has come out very, very recently. Was it October 20th, the release date?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
that
Few
was
weeks
so
ago.
recent. I got my copy on October 20th. I'm about halfway through it. And can I just preface by saying that, it's such a fun yet practical read. You give your readers so many great everyday examples, whether it's on a professional level or a personal level, on how our word choices can really impact and increase our communication with one another. So I definitely think it's practical. So I'm glad that we're able to do this talk, because like I said, I am halfway through this book, and I did have a few questions already. So we can get started with that. But before we do get started, a funny story. I was getting this book from my bedside table right before this talk, and as soon as I lifted it, a bunch of, well, now they're not going to come out, but a bunch of words fell out of it. And I don't know if you can see, but they're just like kitchen, like fridge magnets. But I just thought it was so funny that words were quite literally falling out of your Wordwise book. I don't know who put them there, probably my sister. But I just
Oh,
thought that was so funny.
wow. Yeah, I didn't know anything about these falling words that are falling out of people's books. That wasn't part of my plan at all.
I mean, we can talk offline about what
Okay.
these words are, but anyways, back to the conversation. I am, like I said, in the middle of reading your book, and for those of you who haven't had the chance to get a hold of Will's book yet, it's kind of broken down into two parts. The first one being about word power, and then the second half, word trash, and then the second half being about word power. So, like I said, since the first half of your book is about word trash, what, in your words, what does word trash mean to you, and why do you call it that?
Well, I call it that because it's something that clutters our connection with each other. It clutters our communication. And, think about Marie Kondo. What does she do? She goes into people's homes and identifies the things that don't bring them joy and helps them to rid them from their lives. Well, how about we do that with our words too? There are certain word habits that don't connect us well, that get in the way, they actually hinder connection. So I call it trash because of the cluttering effect. Hopefully that makes sense. And when you
Okay.
think about this, I like a quote by Jean-Paul Sartre, the French author, which I had to study at school, but now I'm more of a fan than I was at school. He said that I'd come to realize that all our troubles spring from our failure to use plain, clear-cut language. And so word trash is the language that isn't plain, that isn't clear-cut, that isn't specific. It's abstract and general.
So why don't you, start off by giving us some examples of what exactly you consider to be word trash?
Right. So, groups of word trash are, corporate jargon, things like reach out and touch base. How often after someone says, I'll reach out and touch base or circle back tomorrow, how often does that
On a
happen in
daily
reality?
basis, especially in corporate America. Yeah.
It's a cop-out. It's vague and general. It's a type of language that politicians use to avoid committing to specifics. So the corporate jargon is one type. There are also, unnecessary ego interjections, things like, I hate to say it, but how often does someone really hate to say something? Donald Trump said, I hate to say it, but the Republican convention was far more impressive than the Democratic convention. Did he really hate to say that? But what does that do? Why is it a problem? Because it introduces this idea of hate that doesn't need to be in our language habits. And yeah, it might seem harmless on the surface, but what is it doing? It's actually reminding us of the word hate, unnecessarily introducing it into conversation. And those associations, even if we don't mean hate when we say it, the association with hate is there in our subconscious, and it persists. So,
Okay.
and then there's small talk, which is the less harmful, and fillers. So yeah, we'll get into some of those.
I did have a question about small talk, so I'm glad that you brought that up. I was reading in your book that you consider small talk to be word trash, and I have my own views on it, which I guess I'll share, before you give your answer. At least in my eyes, I find small talk to be essential to build your network, especially in a corporate setting. I realized that from time to time, if I'm stopping by the office kitchen to grab a cup of coffee, I'll engage in some sort
When
of
was the last time you did that?
months ago. I kind of miss it. I'm not gonna lie, but
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie is another word
That's word
trash. I
trash
know.
right there. Yeah.
This is another thing to note, you guys. It's the more I'm reading this book and the more I've been in conversation with Will offline, I've just been more
Offline is another example of word trash.
see, every other word is word trash, and I'm so aware of it. Like internally, I just know I'm like, oops, I just said a word trash word. So I kind of say, oh, my mistake, and I kind of replace it with a more powerful or different word. So it ends up becoming second nature. But okay, off topic, as I was saying. So, like I said, if I'm in the office kitchen, I'm grabbing a cup of coffee, I somehow find small talk to be essential, in regard to like building a connection with your boss or with a fellow coworker. So in that context, do you still consider small talk to be word trash, or does it just depend on the scenario for you?
Yeah, small talk is probably the least harmful, but what it does is it prevents relationships from developing further. It prevents conversations from developing into something that could have been more meaningful. So some people may say, well, small talk, it helps us to get by in the office.
Mm-hmm.
But what about if you could get by better? What about if you could have better connections, better conversations, and you didn't feel awkward? Because I don't know about you, but whenever I have a small talk conversation, I feel pretty awkward.
It is awkward.
I'm like, oh God, what am I going to say next? I want to get up. But something that comes to mind is how's everything? That's something I heard a lot in the office.
Yeah.
When I was in an office, and that's impossible to respond to with an honest answer. How's everything? How's everything, Maryam?
I don't have an answer for that.
if you know how everything is, right, you'll be on the run from every intelligence agency and AI project on Earth. They're going to hunt you down for your brain. But the truth is we don't know how everything is. So if you get asked that and you want to connect rather than feel that awkwardness and deflect, I recommend, say, I can't answer that, but I am enjoying this meatball sub or whatever you're eating or whatever, something specific that's happening in front of the both of you in that moment. But some people might say, oh, the meatball sub is everything. This meatball sub is everything. This dress is everything. This weather is everything. Insert whatever is everything on social media.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's a meatball sub. So either our worldview of everything is narrowing to the width of a sandwich or a line or both.
Yeah, no, you bring up a great point, and your book does talk a lot about the distinction between, the specific and the abstract, and how the specific is what connects us, whereas abstracts disconnects us. And this was a perfect example, because the more specific you are in your conversations with one another, the more deeper of a connection you can make.
Right.
So on this topic of small talk, and word trash in general, what sort of word trash terms would you advise or recommend for your viewers right now to eliminate from their vocabulary?
On the subject of small talk?
No, of small talk and word trash. So on the topic of word trash, then what sort of word trash words would you?
I mean, there's, I spoke about the corporate jargon being a type of word trash. How's everything is a type of small talk word trash.
I know that from the months of speaking to you and being your friend, you use just a lot, and I know that you catch yourself saying that often, right? And that's something that you do want to avoid saying more. And so why do you think that just, because I never considered just to be word trash, maybe like words such as always and never, which is also in your book, I consider those to be word trash. I can see how they can be word trash, but what about just is word trash to you?
Okay, yeah, thank you for answering, because I was trying to think of an example, and I wrote a book about word trash, but just is a good example. And I was on a few meetings earlier today, and I was noticing how often the word just was being used in a PowerPoint presentation over, something like Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And well, why is just a problem? There was a former Google executive, Ellen Lend, in 2015. She banned the word just from her whole team's communication, right? She did that because she noticed that women were using the word just more than men, and men use it a lot too. but women were using it more. And she concluded that it wasn't adding anything to the sentences. It was what it was doing. It was marking a lack of confidence. It was a timid apology, like instead of asking for something, it was an apology for asking the question. So, think about things like, I just wanted to check in on, just wondering if you decided between the apple or the pear, or if you can just give me an answer. How often do you see an email that starts with, I'm just following up on? I'm just following
I
up
use
on?
it all the time myself. So
Are you following up or are you just following up? I mean, what if you remove the word just from any of those sentences, the sentence
it
is
still
stronger.
makes sense.
And that's what Ellen Lenz found, and she banned it from her whole team's communication.
Wow.
And she realized that once they did this, their communications were stronger and had more impact. So they generated better responses.
That's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm a victim of using it all the time, but I can see how it can, it's unnecessary, and you can just be very direct and to the point without using that word. And, that
it's clutter. It's more clutter that's getting in the way of saying something.
I can see that. And, this brings me to my next point that I wanted to bring up. What I especially like about your book, and I'm going to just try zooming in a little, hopefully the viewers can see it. You have like a
You're zooming in on Zoom. This is a double
zooming
zoom.
in on Zoom. You have like a word trash index, as well as a word power index at the back of your book. And I find this to be so practical. I know I have this book sitting on my work table all the time. And anytime I'm constructing a work email or even sending a personal text to a friend or a loved one, I find myself coming back to this index just to make sure that I'm eliminating when I can those word trash words and replacing them with more powerful words, to really increase and enhance my connection with the person that I'm speaking to, especially during COVID, when you don't have that physical connection. I think it's so important to try to connect as best as you can with your loved ones, and even with your coworkers, via email or text. So it just becomes even more important to be cognizant of the words you're using. So
yes,
definitely a
2020.
good tip. I love that idea of the index at the back. I've never seen a book. Well, never, I shouldn't say never, but I haven't seen a book like this in the past that has had an index in the back. So, okay, enough about word trash. As I mentioned, the first half of the book is about word trash. And then the second half is focused more on word power. And so I did mention that I haven't gotten to that part yet, unfortunately. I do plan on reading it very soon. But I did get the chance to skim through the second half, and, that focused more on word power. So in your words, what is word power and why did you call it that?
Well, I like to think of a quote by David Foster Wallace. In his book, he had a book called Quack This Way. Okay. And he said that writing and speaking well means there's an electricity about it. And it links in with the idea of connection. What's connection is, you need two connection points for electricity to flow. So what word power is the opposite of word trash, because if you think of word trash as being abstract, word power is specific, like a connection point. Or think about when you're repairing two halves of electrical cord. You cut a piece of electrical cord in half, you'll see there's a red wire. I'm not sure about America. In England, you got a red wire, you got a yellow and green wire, and they used to have a brown wire, I think. I'm clearly not an electrician.
I'm not even whatever color you choose, purple, green, gray, it'll make sense to me. So let's go with it.
Yeah, so it's important. Word power is specific. So if I try to repair these two halves of cord and just say, oh, this is a wire and this is a wire, without being specific about the color of each wire, I'm either going to get a shock or no connection at all. And that's what happens with words as well. We say something inadvertently through habit and we might offend someone. Even the word really can do that. It's like, oh,
really?
There
was me asking, really.
For example, you said after this conversation, you weren't really that bad at talking well. And I would say, really? I wasn't really. So that means I was bad. I wasn't bad, or I wasn't really bad. Anyway, that's another example. But so word power is specific. Word power is about inspiring people with words. It's feeling the spirit in the connection. So it might not be electricity, but think about words that inspire. So the more specific we can be, even the word specific is good. Nouns, calling out, if we notice that our ego is trying to control the conversation, even calling out ego, say, oh, my ego is in play right now, or calling out BS even. And there are some words from other languages, untranslatable. So I'll give you an example of one of those in a minute, that can connect us with this sense of human spirit.
So on the topic of connection and deepening our connections with one another, there was a section in your book about how we connect better with each other if we speak but don't talk. So what do you exactly mean by the distinction between speak versus talk?
Right, well, to speak is more specific than to talk. So remember, word trash is abstract, generalized, hyperbole, often polarized language, always, never. You said never. You did say never.
I did.
So that's not specific. You know, if I've forgotten to take the trash out and my girlfriend says to me, you always forget to take the trash out, then she's abstracted the times that I didn't take it out, which was this week and last week, right? I forgot 2 weeks, but that's not always, or maybe I never remember to do it, but that's abstracting 2 instances into an always. That's generalizing something, polarizing it to either be always or never, which is unnecessary. And I'm going to be defensive if I hear that language, and I could defend myself because I know the truth is I took the trash out at least 3 times this year. What month is it? It's October. Okay, well that 3 times is still not never. But I forgot.
Okay, yeah, no, I can count like on my fingers, on my 10 fingers, so many instances where I've gotten into fights with people, with my siblings for the most part, on and we always use now I said always,
right, yeah.
But
so those times in those conversations that you
in
have,
those conversations,
right,
you know, we've used the words always and never, and that does
right,
get us in trouble.
Yeah, but to answer your question about why to speaking is more specific than to talk, because we associate the verb to talk with other things than just moving our mouths to make the words come out over Zoom or face-to-face. So Elizabeth Stokoe is a professor of social interaction in a UK university in a place called Loughborough. And she says there's several idioms associated, well, there are, it doesn't matter if she says it or not, there are several idioms associated with talk. So you're all talk is cheap. You walk the walk, but you talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. Yeah. You know, so these are mostly negative idioms, negative associations, right? So talk has those, speak doesn't have all that extra abstract metaphors and idioms. So, okay, but where's the science behind this, right? Why, how can we prove that to speak is more powerful than talking, the verbs, that is? So Elizabeth Stokoe and her colleagues, a team at Loughborough University, they studied thousands of hours of conversations, and they found that in some contexts, requests to talk are much easier to resist. And think about life or death situations. She observed this when looking at the transcripts between police and people in crisis, and some of them were suicidal. And if the police said, can we talk? Then sometimes the people would say, I don't want to talk. What's the point in talking? But when the verb was speak, the person was more likely to open up in conversation.
Interesting.
So speaking rather than talking, in this conversations that this professor and her team in Loughborough University studied, may have inadvertently saved someone's life. So it's that powerful. So she recommends saying, can I speak to you about this, instead of can we talk, if you want to form a connection.
I almost feel like the word speak also has more of a sort of positive connotation than talk does.
Yeah, it might seem like a bit of effort to just pay attention to words of anyone who's listening. Some people who are listening might be thinking, well, well, it's just, I don't want to change how I talk.
What differences are they?
It's too difficult.
Yeah.
But notice how often you use these words like always. And once you start noticing, you don't have to make much effort at all. It becomes automatic. And it's happened to me. You said it's happened to you as well.
100%. Like,
To
to anyone
people,
listening,
yeah,
it honestly just becomes second nature. And I said the word honestly, and that is also considered word trash. So just like that,
right.
your mind can just program, you can program yourself into eliminating those word trash words and using those powerful word choices instead.
Yeah. Think about that Leonardo DiCaprio movie, Inception, which I like. I've watched it a few times. You introduce an idea and you think it's your own idea, but really it was planted by a conversation or overheard, someone else's conversation or a book that you read. Well, this is helpful in that we can prime ourselves to notice things that we weren't noticing before. And what we're noticing, and what I'll encourage readers to do, is to notice these word trash words. And when you start noticing them, it becomes almost effortless to eliminate them, or just to rewind almost, or get the Tipex. Maybe people don't know what Tipex is here, correction fluid out and
oh, like
put it
pulling
out.
white out?
Yeah, when we used to have typewriters. I'm not that old, but I do like typewriters. And change the word. So, wait a minute, I don't mean that. I mean this. I don't mean always. I don't mean should. I don't mean never. I mean, I should read that book. I don't mean I should read that book. I mean, I want to read that book.
Yeah. No, now that I've gone through half of this book and I am more aware of my word choices, I catch myself, even if I'm, for example, in an argument with my sister, with my mother, and I say, oh, you always do this, I make sure to take a step back and I'm like, oh, sorry, I meant like you usually do this, or you've done this so many times. And I try to correct my mistakes so that they don't play that defensive side, and they don't react in a negative way, or in a more negative way. But yeah, okay, enough about
Well, I'm
speaking.
glad you're making use of it halfway through. Let me know how the rest goes.
Yeah, I'm excited to read Word Power, but I did say that I skimmed through it, and there was also a section where you spoke about happy words, and you said that there are words that can actually make us feel happier.
Yeah, and there's some science behind word happiness as well. So, University of Vermont back in the US, there was a team there this team I've spoken to got their permission to reprint their list of words in WordWise as well. So thanks to those guys at the University of Vermont. They identified an emotional spectrum of language by ranking the top 10,000 most frequently used words across Twitter, Google Books, the New York Times, and music lyrics. And they asked participants to rate each word a number from 1 to 9. And 1 was, oh, I feel least happy when I see this word or hear it. And 9 was, oh, this makes me feel good. They call it psychological valence scale, but psychological valence is attractiveness of emotion, okay? So it's happiness. Let's call it happiness. And so a rating of 9 was the happiest word. And what they found, can you guess which word that came out on top as voted by overall the happiest word across the music lyrics, the New York Times, Google, all the books on Google Books, and there's one other thing I'm forgetting, Twitter. Oh, forget about Twitter, but yeah, Twitter as well.
My guess would be either happy or happiness.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't sound a bit dismissive.
Okay, then go ahead. Tell me.
But no, it wasn't happiness. Happiness did make the list, but it wasn't the best. It wasn't the happiest word. It was in there. What's that?
Smile.
What were people doing? A lot of people were doing this week when finally there was some good news, depending on what you think. But what you just did it right then.
Laughed.
Yeah. So the word that elicited the most happiness out of those 4 was laughter. It wasn't laugh, it was laughter. But laugh also made the list. The word laughter, use it more, even in work if you can. But it's not just laughing that makes us feel good. The word laughter itself. Have you tried laughter yoga?
I've never heard of such a thing. Well, I
Never?
haven't heard of
Well,
such
you
a
just did, so never is a lie,
thing.
clearly.
I haven't heard of such a thing until now.
Okay, well, now you have heard of laughter yoga. Laughter yoga is a thing. I haven't tried it, but well, I've only tried it within the confines of my own apartment when no one else is watching. But laughter itself, the word on its own, can make us feel better when we read it.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to start
Yeah,
using that more
yeah,
often with people as well, and with myself too. I guess, what does it also evoke happiness within yourself if you kind of say it out loud, even like in
yeah.
front
If I'm feeling a bit, sometimes, you know, to prep, I get a bit of stage fright or nerves before public speaking. So sometimes I just repeat to myself, laughter, 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 over and over, I imagine I'm a, you know, a chimpanzee in the jungle
of
and swinging in the trees, speaking laughter, laughter, laughter.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna try that next time because I get stage fright all the time. And on the topic of word power, and this is a bit, I guess, a controversial question in that some people consider emojis to be
Oh,
words, you know, and others don't. So you have a section in your book where you say that emojis can be word power, but would they be considered words?
well, I thought about that question myself for about a month. Then I found out that in 2015, an emoji, the face with tears of joy emoji, was the 2015 word of the year for Oxford dictionaries. And I don't argue with Oxford dictionaries. You know,
Oxford Dictionary said that.
Oxford and Cambridge are the authorities on English as far, well, I mean, I'm not going to diss Merriam-Webster, but
It's my name, you can't diss it.
right. So yeah, it was a word of the year. And then, you know, even if you don't agree that emojis are words, they are, what are they? They're symbols. And what do
Mhm.
they represent? They represent meaning.
Emotions, meaning, yeah.
Yeah, so a symbol that represents meaning, isn't that the definition of language? Well, it's a definition of language. It's not the definition, but it's one
Yeah.
definition.
No,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I mean, it doesn't matter if you think, if you believe language is evolved from pictures or hieroglyphs or clicks, and the click languages are something that really interest me.
What
They,
are click languages?
well, there's a book called The First Word written by another New Yorker, and she she has proposed that clicks form the first language. The clicks were the source of the first words. So we're
Interesting.
just clicking with their mouths. And actually, some animals also use clicks to communicate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, if you want to know more about clicks, read The First Word.
we're
But that's not written by me. So I was talking about, you know,
talking about emojis, but
yeah, they're connected to meaning, and it doesn't matter if the symbol's a word, a sound, or a picture. It's
I
a
mean,
symbol that
I do have
represents
to
meaning.
agree.
Even a word is a symbol that represents meaning.
Yeah, no, I do have to agree with you. I find myself using emojis all the time via
Do,
text
do
message.
you do you have to agree with me? You
No,
need
but
to
I
agree with
want
me?
to agree with
Am I
you.
am I compelled? Am I forcing you to agree with me?
See, for those of you watching, this is our everyday conversation where he's literally pestering me for all my poor word choices, but making me
No, they're not poor word
good.
choices. I'm just having fun.
I know.
And I
No,
said
but
just. I just said just. So you can make fun of me.
you
That's a
said just,
word. That
I just said
word
honestly.
trash word that I'm trying to eliminate still.
We're
That
becoming
just creeps
word
in.
geeks by constantly just stopping and bugging each other with our word choices. But anyhow, I do find myself using emojis a lot, and I do feel like they make the conversation feel more alive. Again, during COVID, when you're not physically in contact with a lot of your friends, using emojis can
Right.
bring the conversation to more life, and
Oh,
it gives often a good context into the message you're sending.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
well that's a good point. You know, emojis bring the body to language, literally. And there was another study, which I forgot, but I'll mention it now. In Australia, which is one of my home countries, I'm an
Mhm.
Australian citizen. I just don't have the accent. But Flinders University in Adelaide, Australia, they found that a smile face emoticon, so that's a stick man equivalent of an emoji, right? It doesn't have all the colors and everything. It's just a line. You can do it with a old-fashioned typewriter,
Yeah.
or one of those old phones without a screen. Well, actually, you can't do it without a screen. That wouldn't work.
But with
But
the small ones,
yeah, so the
yeah.
stick, the emoticon smile face elicits the same reaction in our brains as when someone smiles at us for real, in real life. So,
Really?
and that's from a stick man.
Wow.
Yeah, so it activates our mirror neurons and makes us smile.
And now we don't only just
That
have
is,
man, we can send like hundreds of different types of
yeah.
emotions.
But if the symbol can make us smile, that's word power.
Yeah. No,
That is
I
word, that is, you know, one of the better examples of word power. It's actually producing a physiological reaction in a human being.
and I also feel like it saves me because I'm a very sarcastic human being. So I don't want people to take what I say, too seriously. So I always add a little smiley face or a little tongue sticking out to kind of give context to what I'm saying. So
Oh,
it does kind of allow you to be more specific with your messages.
right. I'm not sure about the tongue sticking out one, but I'll have to look into that. I just said I'll have to. I want to look into that. I will.
So I don't want to take up too much time because it has been, I want to say, 30, 40 minutes of us just speaking. But let me now finish off with, oh no, there's one important question that I have left. And I took a note of that because I'm like, I can't forget to ask Will this question. But you, in your book, you have a word to use if you're trying to persuade someone to
Oh,
go somewhere or to do something. So I know what this word is, but do you want to share with the viewers what this word is?
yeah. So I used this word on Maryam to ask her to join me in conversation tonight. And it was the word willing. So the word willing has the power to change the course of a conversation. And so in the context of the phrase, would you be willing to do something, instead of, can you do me a favor, for example? Can you do me a favor is word trash. Would you be willing to do something? People are much more likely to say yes. And there's science behind that as well. Remember I mentioned somebody called Elizabeth Stokoe at the University of Loughborough in the UK? She found that, people were asked by their doctors to attend a meditation session. Some were asked to attend meditation session, and these are in thousands of hours of conversations that her and her team looked at, Stokoe and her team. And they found that people who had initially said yes, no, had initially said no, I don't want to go to a meditation session, or no, I don't want to go to a weight loss class, for the people who were obese and being asked by their doctors, those same people changed their minds. A lot of those same, not all of them, but many of them changed their minds when the question was rephrased, would you be willing to go to a meditation session next Thursday? Specifics, right?
Yeah.
And what willing does, it actually puts the desire, it's almost doing inception of desire into the person. You're no longer doing something for the other person, going out of your way to do it. You're doing it because you want to do it. If I'm willing to do this, it means I want to do it.
Yeah.
I have the will to do it. Okay. So she found that people changed their minds when they were asked the same request, but with different words. Would you be willing to go to meditation? Would you be willing to go to weight loss class? The same thing happened with cold callers, and in different contexts, in all these hours of conversations they looked at. And
I have real life examples of when, this does work. I actually conducted a mini experiment with my work coworkers where I sent a request to two different people, one using, can you do this for me? And the other one, would you be willing to do it? And would you be willing, got a quicker response, and they were able to help me. So it just goes to show that, these word choices, even though it may not seem like they make a difference in your everyday conversations and connections with other people, over time, you will realize that it has more of an impact than you think.
for sure. And if I was, going to say, if you want to try this word-wise thing for a few weeks, see how it goes, then not just pick 3 words, just, try noticing just, the word just, how often you're using it. Try eliminating it from your emails. Do a Control F before you hit send and just delete all the justs. And try speaking, not talking. And also try, whenever I make a request now, it's become habit to, if I'm asking for help, to say, would you be willing? And I go back and I delete the other way that I phrased it. Can you send, I delete that and I just replace it quickly with would you be willing? And people are responding better to me.
Thank you for that tip, Will. So on the topic of the word willing, since we were talking about that, I was wondering, Will, whether you would be willing to end us off by reading us one of your favorite passages from the book, if you have a favorite passage.
I don't. I don't have a favorite passage. Well, not,
you love the
not
whole
one,
thing.
not one that I can pinpoint. I'm going to read it myself again. But the one passage that, I was having a quick browse, and it's one of my least favorite word trash words. So I'll read out the passage about that. One of my least favorite corporate jargon phrases is move the needle, move the freaking needle. So, all right, here we go. First time I'm doing this. Moving the needle will not increase performance. Move the needle and this is a quote from an actor, move the needle is a new favorite of certain senior managers at work. It means nothing, much like their endless rhetoric. That's from Thomas Jostling, an actor. In early 2019, I was at a conference where a chief revenue officer made one of the most inspiring speeches I can remember about curiosity, kindness, and courage, and how new ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance data, can help us save our planet. And not part of the book, but I recommend David Attenborough's Netflix show. I watched that last night. It's fantastic. It put spirit into me. And then she ruined it with one simple word trashy phrase: move the needle. Connection unplugged. Spark gone, unlit. A few days later, I received a marketing email for a communication workshop. Here's an extract. As our culture dive bombs headfirst into primarily screen-mediated relationships, we lose the ability to have honest conversations and alienation grows. Many of you know this or sense it, and still intellectually getting it doesn't move the needle forward. God, I dislike that phrase. What the marketer wants to communicate is that getting it intellectually doesn't help you have an honest conversation, but nor does the needle. Needles are for drawing blood, administering Novocaine, and other unpleasant activities. California-based PR pro and founder of Silicon Valley Story Lab, Giovanni Rodriguez, reports how people are both frustrated and embarrassed about the phrase, which has become one of the most prevalent and annoying cliches in the world of technology marketing. Embarrassed because we, PR and marketing people, are so compliant to the demands of a world that requires us to be earth-shaking. Frustrated because we have moved from a dumb metaphor, earth-shaking, to an even dumber metaphor, moving the needle. That suggests that this shaking of the earth thing we do is somehow knowable and measurable. What we actually do, in fact, is measurable, but it's the instrument of measurement that we're looking at here. Yes, it's a metaphor, but it's a metaphor that grossly exaggerates our role in business. Before we go any further, let's make sure we are clear on what metaphor is. So I'll use this definition from Google, actually. Late 15th century, from French métaphore via Latin, Greek metaphora, from metapherein to transfer, which means to transfer. A figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. I had fallen through a trapdoor of depression, said Mark. That was the example that the dictionary gave. So metaphors can be useful when we're communicating an idea from one subject to someone who has no exposure to that subject and its vocabulary. Without metaphor, we'd sometimes have as much difficulty as someone explaining Skype to a caveman. What isn't useful is a metaphor used in place of specifics that are universally understood. For example, move the needle when it is used instead of sell more or sign up more subscribers. Yeah, I'll leave it there because that is the end of that piece on moving the needle.
Favorite of mine. There's so many everyday examples that, you know, people in corporate America use, and you kind of explain why they are, you know, considered word trash and words that we could use instead of metaphors like move the needle. So thank you for that, Will.
No worries.
It seemed like you were having a hard time even saying it.
Yeah,
you just liked it so much.
Disgust. Yeah.
It was like, it was really hard getting it even out. It was like
It was. It was.
And it's so interesting. I mean, I loved, so, you know, sitting in the background, I always love listening to these conversations. And it's like, I'm sitting here nodding my head because when you brought up the conversation about the word just, I remember when she did that, when it was back in 2015. And I remove that from every email that I absolutely do that, because it is amazing how we use it and how it is such a, you know, what you said is like, it just takes the power away. Oh, you know, you're apologizing. It's like, okay, yeah, just, you know, so that was one. But the one takeaway I took from this, because in my job, I have to ask people to do things all of the time, and willing, I can't wait to use that now. I cannot
have fun
wait.
with it.
Yeah, I can't wait to. Would you be willing? I can't. So everybody out there who gets emails from me, look out, because it's coming. But I wanted to know, how long did it take you to write this book, Will?
I started it at the end of 2017, November. I thought I'd finished it by the end of 2018, but that was the first draft, and there was a lot of word trash still left in the first draft. So, you know, I had help from an editor friend first of all, and then it was edited a couple of times by the publisher at Running Press. Great team I've got over there. Jess Reardon was my editor, and then her colleague Jennifer Cassius and the copy editor. They all helped me eliminate. There was some ego in the book as well, and I had to get that out as well.
Yeah, it's amazing all the things that you think that you've got this like really tight thing, and then when you get all these other people involved, it's like, it's amazing the process that you go through in any book that you write. But I imagine with this one, boy, this one would have had to have been a really tough one to edit. And yeah, hats off to everybody on this.
I enjoyed the editing process a lot. It was good. It was like having a conversation with the editor Jess, back and forth, and we were laughing and having fun with the markup in the manuscript. Someone who's not used to marked up manuscript might have looked horrific, or like a paper that was going to get an F. But it was a lot of fun responding to the comments.
Oh, for sure, I can imagine. And it's just like, you know, because editors' jobs are to trash words. I mean, that's their job.
Yeah, right.
So, that must have been really interesting. So I do have a question that came through from another way versus on Facebook. So this person wants to know, what would your #1 tip be for training oneself to eliminate verbal filler like and like? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, there is a great app called Orai, O-R-A-I, and I have it on my phone. It helps me to notice fillers. It also helps you to check your voice for energy. One thing I struggle with is the energy and the pitch and the intonation. I'm not a public speaker. I'm a writer. So I'm working on that. But Orai, it gives you an Orai score for fillers. So my filler score, thankfully, is pretty good. You know, it comes out. But my overall word Orai score is, you know, around 77%, something like that. Fillers, I'm getting 100%. This book works, but you know, Orai, you don't have to do anything. You just hit record when you're talking, and it will tell you how many fillers you're using. And then once you start paying attention to fillers, such as like, and I don't know, it used to be people associated the word like with California. That was before it spread to the rest of the world. Now Britain, you know, the UK, Australia, everyone's saying like whenever you go and get a coffee. Yeah. And you know, people say like instead of said a lot. They like said like it was like whatever.
Right.
So did you say verbal fillers?
Verbal filler.
Yeah,
like
verbal fillers. Yeah, so Orai, that app automates, use AI to your advantage. AI can help humans be better communicators.
Yeah,
And I
because
guess
that's the thing is that you know, when, like you were saying too, Maryam, it's you become so conscious of just like I just said, a couple words will, and then you're just like, well, wait a minute, I need to not say that.
yeah. And I've also gotten the tip from several people, because I also, and I mean, I still say and like all the time, but just pausing and staying silent instead of saying like, said is also key. And over time, you'll learn to just pause and just stay silent. And that's more powerful than anything.
For sure, because that's the thing, that in public speaking is something that, you know, you get nervous and you don't really even realize that you're saying. It just becomes this thing that happens.
Yeah.
You don't realize that you're doing it until you look at a playback and you're, oh God, look at all the ums I just did. That's horrible. And then one other thing before we wrap it up, because we're going to this you may or may not want to answer this. I don't know. We'll get a little political, but maybe not too political. But your general advice on how to talk with most impact about political matters with someone with ostensibly insurmountable differences in opinion.
That's a good one.
Be to pay attention, and it's whenever you're struggling for how to start a conversation as well, it's the same tip I give people, is notice what specifically is happening. So pay attention to the specific words they're using. So if someone has an insurmountable opinion one way or another, what language are they using? Are they saying always, or are they using metaphors? Are they calling the candidate a monster? That's dehumanizing language. So, and then find a way to not respond to that in kind, but to be very specific in response. People have a really hard time arguing with specifics. Just in the relationship example of forgetting to take the trash out, you know, if you're very specific, it's, oh, you didn't do it this Wednesday. Well, I can argue with that. Or that if they're saying that candidate has never said that, that could easily be proven wrong, right? So then you can find a specific instance. Well, there was, and okay, so a good way to introduce an opposing idea is to use something, a word that John McWhorter is another author who's, you know, obsessed with words like me, and he talks about the word well as being a way to introduce a new idea without offending someone. So someone says something like Donald Trump's a monster, and I'm not a Donald Trump supporter. I'm not going to get political, but I say, well, you know, I'm sure he has some human characteristics. He breathes, he brushes his teeth before bed. I imagine he has to eat 3 meals a day or some food. He has to drink water. So he's a human being. Might not be and etc. Fill in the blanks according to your opinions, but be specific. And so when you introduce the opposing idea, use the word well. So start the sentence with, well, you say that, but there was this time when this happened.
So softening it with well. And using it, being specific. Right. Yeah, that's really interesting.
It means you've respected the other person who said something. You've listened to them, and now you're going to be specific.
Instead of just going back with calling the other person the same. It's like, there has to be a way to have a conversation. Yeah. Getting back to learning how to have a conversation.
Yeah, and all this language, which is on the increase, you can track it on Google Ngram. These polarizing words, and you know, Joe Biden in his speech, he mentioned that we have to stop calling each other enemy. The word enemy has been increasing so much thanks to Twitter. And Donald Trump has said repeatedly that certain press outlets like the New York Times are the enemy of the American people. And the fake news is the enemy of the American people. The New York Times is not going to war with the American people. That, you know, you don't have to read the paper. It's not an enemy. Maybe they're opposed to views, but they're opponents. That's what the language that Biden did. He was more specific immediately. He said, let's stop using this polarizing language. We didn't say that. Those are my words.
Right.
But let's stop calling each other enemy. We're all Americans.
Well, and I think to the point, and we'll wrap it up here a little bit, words matter.
They do.
Words matter in all forms. Trash words. All so just have to ask another quick question for you. Are you working on another book, or what's next?
Planning to travel back to the UK to see my family before flights get altogether cancelled. Hopefully they won't, but in January, I want to start working on a novel about connection.
Ah, that's a really good one.
Switching genres. Yeah. So yes, I have the idea of the situation. I need to do some work on the characters, but the situation is there. And I'm going to start writing this in January.
Excellent. Can't wait. So probably 2022 or something was where we're probably looking for something.
I will be, and I will send you an email saying, would you be willing to have a look at this book?
There you go. Send it my way. I was just going to tell you about a book here that's coming out this coming January. It's called The Liar's Dictionary. It's all about words. It's very good.
The liars or the lighters?
Liars. L-I-A.
Oh, the liar. Okay. Right.
Liar's Dictionary. It's coming out in January. It's really good. So look for that one. So we're going to wrap it up. Maryam, tell us if people want to follow you. Are you on public social media, and how would they find you?
So I'm not super active on social media. I think the best way that they could find me is on Instagram. I am on private, but if they're from California, or if I'm getting the request now, I'll know that it was from this live, so I'll accept them. I don't use Twitter much, so I think Instagram would be the best way, and I can pass my handle to you.
Must be, because people may want to see some of your recipes and your desserts that you cook. So. People might be interested in that. And Will, for
a baker, but I'm working on it.
Hey, we're all got to start somewhere, and we get better and better as we do. And Will, for people out there that maybe are new to you from this, what's the best way for them to find you?
So my name's Jelbert Will, at Jelbert Will. On Instagram is the best way, and that I'll put any news about the book, events, and I'm going to be speaking at the World Happiness Conference on the 20th of November. It's usually in Australia. This year it's virtual, so I don't even have to go to Australia. The Dalai Lama is also speaking, so I recommend that as an event coming up on the 20th of November. So at Jelbert Will on Instagram.
Excellent. Well, this was a really fun conversation. Words, boy, they do matter, and it's learning something new. And I always love getting a new little tip. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Julie, for hosting us. And it's been fun. Yeah.
Excellent. So with that, we're going to say goodbye to Facebook. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone in California.
Good night.
Live stream.